So the question was asked of me the other day, how do you write natural dialogue for a character? And ironically, I wasn't going to discuss this topic just yet. I wanted to save it. I really wanted to go into how to write villains and heroes better, since that's a big topic these days. But the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to address this topic, because it is a good point. Dialogue is a part of writing that I feel many writers need to improve on. But not just writing dialogue, writing realistic dialogue. Dialogue that can be believed or understood, but also be appropriate for the characters you write. So let's briefly talk about dialogue. This won't take very long because I want to do a lot more with talking about dialogue, but I want to save that for a separate section. So let's briefly discuss this. Okay, so funny story I want to share before we get started. My brother once for a class had to attend a college play. It was a production of Julius Caesar, but the twist was that it was done in modern day and the entire cast was women. There were a lot of problems. You can already tell where this is going. But not only was the play awful, because there was a lot to hate about it, but something my brother noted was that all the characters spoke in the original Shakespearean format. He pointed out to me later, it felt like I couldn't get into the production when the obviously uneducated homeless people are talking like Shakespeare. I can't believe what I'm seeing. And the reason I tell you this story is because it demonstrates the first point about good dialogue. It must fit the time period, the context, and the position of your characters. Dialogue has to feel like it fits. If the dialogue does not fit the character, the setting, or the background, it's going to be off-putting. For example, in my story of Shogun of Crime, I made this same mistake very early on in the story and have been working to re-edit the story so that it fits more naturally. In the story, the main character is Oichi Taiga, a Japanese young lady who is the daughter of a Yakuza crime lord. She's come to America and must speak English around others. Now, I didn't write her with a stereotypical Asian accent with stuff like, "Wow, hamburger so sugoi, me rub you wrong time." No, that's horse shit. I'm not doing that. No. But what I did wrong was I made her speak too well. Oichi spoke with the sophistication and dictation of someone who was not only American, but well-educated in the American system. She'd reference poets and novelists and speeches from historical figures and spoke with an air of grace that fascinated the people around her while also intimidating them. It became clear to me that without realizing it, her dialogue had become too good. It didn't fit her character, so I am now working to rewrite and rework her dialogue. How? Well, for starters, I had to consider that she probably doesn't know many American turns of phrase or idioms. Those are important. A lot of the turns of phrases and idioms you've used or heard might feel too commonplace and might feel out of place with a character who doesn't speak it. If you're writing about a Japanese ninja, he's probably not going to use American colloquialisms. He probably wouldn't use "what in tarnation," because that doesn't fit. So I would occasionally have her mess things up or confuse them. Like, a good example is the character Ziva David from NCIS, who one of the funny little quirks that she has is she occasionally misunderstands lines. Like, for example,
I just want you to know that I know.
Ducky, drip it.
Do you mean drop it or zip it?
American idioms drive me up the hole.
Well, actually, never mind.
So sometimes I would make her speech also a little choppy or broken. You heard that in my For Honor story, where I made the Peacekeeper speak a little slower and a little less intellectually because she's struggling to speak the language. For Oichi, she's struggling to form conjunctions and conjugate verbs. There are some areas that she's not great at. The change in her manner of speech made her more believable as a character at the cost of her overall air of grace in the way of talking. It's a pricey compromise, and it required more work, but one that needed to be made to increase believability. Here's the thing, guys. You don't need to make a character sound too stupid or too outside the realm of normality, but if there isn't some kind of differentiation in character dialogue, it's going to sound a little weird, because when every character sounds the same, then you have to wonder, where's the difference? Dialogue can be used to explain character difference without any real effort. And I'm going to do another video in the future where I talk about the importance of showing, not telling, or letting actions display dialogue rather than letting dialogue speak, which is more of a visual learning thing, like with movies and TV shows. But again, we'll get into all that later. That's another video topic. For now, let's try a slight test. Many of you who watch my channel are familiar with Apollyon, right? The primary villain of For Honor story campaign. Let's discuss her dialogue. Apollyon's dialogue is always cold, and you sense an air of sophistication, intelligence, and cunning to her voice. It's not just the sound, but it's the way she speaks. Like in this scene before the siege on the Viking stronghold, listen to what she says.
I had questions. Master, why this fortress? It looks like it's just a storehouse.
It is. And that's why we're here. These barbarians. They seem like they're good people. They embrace each other like they were all kin. But that is all a lie. When night falls, they stab each other with their knives. If there are wolves among them, should we not set them free?
Now imagine if she'd said that differently when asked, why attack this place? What if she'd said, oh, come on now, Warden, this place ain't so bad. We could make it a lot better than it already is and do some good here. There's no reason to be worried about anything. We're doing a lot of good here. We're going to save more lives than we lose today and help the Vikings. Isn't that worth fighting for? Now, what's the difference? This dialogue is warm, it's hopeful, it's uplifting and erring on the positive. As nice as it sounds nice, doesn't it? It sounds encouraging, but it doesn't fit Apollyon. Apollyon never once reassures the Warden. She just explains the ideological reasoning for her actions, which kind of fits since Apollyon is lost in her own obsessions. But let's try another one. Listen to this dialogue. Maybe there was a time I loved you. A time that I thought you could love me. I don't know if it was because I was young and hopeful or just too stupid to see you for what you were, but No, on second thought, I was definitely the fool. I was the stupid one. No matter how I look at it, there's not an honest thing you've ever done or said. I was just the idiot who believed you. You love me? To hell with that. You never loved me. You played me like a damn fiddle and left me to the side the moment you got the chance. I don't even know you. All right, now let's rewrite that dialogue a bit. You lying whore. I can't believe I ever loved you. Much shorter, right? Much more direct, fierce, and accusatory. Now, the crazy thing is that both forms of dialogue are good, and both are telling the same thing. They're both a man calling out a woman who wronged them or lied to them, and the man declared he no longer loves them. But what kind of person would say these things? It's clear they're saying the same things, but one is saying it a bit differently. For the first one, it'd probably be a man who's well-spoken, well-educated, and from a prominent position. He's someone who is eloquent with his words. Maybe he's a prince, a diplomat, or a person of high position who would know how to use his words to cut deeper. He's also someone who's very elaborate with what he has to say. It's not enough that he tells you how he feels. He wants to elaborate on the original point. He wants to build an image of what he's seeing. He likes to visually portray what he says. I'm very similar. The second one sounds like it's from the everyman, someone who's quick to emotional outrage and violently literal in his terminology. He doesn't pull punches, but he's not as eloquent. He gets out what he needs to say in just a few words, but at the cost of not always making them bite. So the question is, what character are you writing? Figure out what kind of character you're writing, who they are, what their education is like, where they grow up, because a person who grows up, say, in the sticks or in the boonies may speak a lot differently than someone who grew up in, say, a well-off, rich family. A person who grew up in Europe may have a different way of speaking than a person who grew up in Africa. A person who grew up knew a different language like Spanish or French may speak in a different way than someone who speaks fluent English. Lots of things to consider when writing dialogue. But another thing, a major thing to consider is what kind of attitude they have. The kind of attitude, like for example, we just talked about two guys saying the exact same thing, but one is much more direct and fierce and blunt. The other is eloquent, long-winded, and trying to paint a picture with his words. Both are totally serviceable, but one is very different from the other in terms of how they deliver. So decide what kind of character would say those things. Now, one thing I want to address before I start to wrap things up is the question of real talk. I once heard Anna Kasparian on the Young Turks respond to people who told her they don't like her swearing all the time by saying, that's how you know it's real talk. So swearing is a sign of real talk. I'll respond with this. As my father used to tell me, swearing is usually a sign you have nothing intelligent to say. Now, am I saying you should never have swearing in your dialogue? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You can have swearing. I even encourage it. But the swearing must fit. Again, it's all about how it fits the person. A good, well-off-to-do school choir boy probably isn't going to swear. He's going to be your, oh, golly gosh, or gee willikers, mister. But a person who grows up in the American regular school system, he's probably going to swear like a sailor. The words, for example, the words whore, slut, and harlot, they all mean pretty much the same thing, right? But who would use which? Who would use the word whore, slut, and harlot? Maybe a religious man would use harlot because that sounds more religious. Slut sounds more common and colloquial. Whore sounds more direct and fierce and angry. Writing dialogue is a careful calculation of using the right words, the right phrases, and the right tone. I recommend practice. One thing I like to do in writing dialogue, a dialogue heavy scene especially, or chapter, is I talk out the dialogue and try to imitate the character speaking. I insert pauses. I raise my voice. I deepen my voice. I try to force anger, joy, and sarcasm. Anything else I can think of the character would express. And in doing all these things, I can more easily tell if this character is speaking the way they should or not. Dialogue isn't as scary as you'd think. Frankly, the thing that a lot of people have a problem with is they write the way they talk, which isn't a bad thing all the time. Sometimes writing how you talk can apply a unique manner of speech and dictation. However, if all your characters speak the same way or in the same style, it suddenly takes out some of the variety. Take some time to listen to characters in anime, for example. Even a language like Japanese, which to most foreigners may sound exactly the same, has subtleties that can be noticed. Take probably my favorite anime, One Piece. Every single one of the characters talk in a unique way that sets them apart. Luffy is crass but direct, speaking in rude dictation, but always to the point and always matter of fact. He won't hold back what he has to say or mess words.
Whoa, calm down. This is nothing to cry over. Stop.
No one has ever yelled at me before, and I don't like it. It's horrible.
How can someone so big be such a coward and a crybaby? You know, I don't think I like you.
Zoro is very similar, but Zoro has a maturity to him. He speaks his mind for all to see, but does so in a manner to ensure he's understood. So he's more well-spoken about his intense motives and reasons, whereas Luffy often is vague, though not intentionally.
And after he lost that duel, he left by his own accord. You understand, don't you? He may be an idiot, but this guy is still our captain. We're better off without a crew member who doesn't respect their leader when things get rough. A crew with no respect and a captain that doesn't demand it are destined to fall apart quickly. Listen, I don't mind if you're easygoing most of the time, but right now you gotta man up. You can't let people walk all over you. Because if you do that, it's gonna be me who leaves this crew.
Frankie is loud, so a lot of what he says can come off as abrupt or lacking in context because he's used to being the center of attention. This makes him sound boisterous and sometimes lacking in tact. He often likes to apply the word super to describe things. He likes to describe things that he likes or attributes himself to. Some characters, particularly ones with a niche, may have common phrases they repeat.
And I can change it however I want. Flat top, fro, wings! I've got an extra head. You want to know why? For picking my nose! Super!
Will somebody listen to me? Come on! Super!
And that about wraps things up, but before I go, I'm going to try something a little different this time around. A little fun test, and I'll probably do more of these with the Raven Writing Room. I want y'all to apply what you learned. I know this isn't a classroom or anything, but it's fun to get some practice in. And what I'll do is I'll have you guys take a little test, a little fun quiz for me and put it in the comments. Put your answers in the comments. And the best ones, the best 3 in the next Raven's Writing Room, I will dedicate some time to reading them for you. So here's the test. I'm not going to grade you, obviously, but the top 3 will win. So here's what you're going to do. I want you to design a character all your own. Just make a character. It can be whoever, whatever. The specs are all yours to design. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide you a scenario for your character, and they are going to have to say something or react in some way. Based on the character specs that you give them, what will they say in this scenario? Think about the specs you give your character, and then think about what kind of dialogue they would use. So, here's the scenario. Your character's running late for school or work, depending on their age and context, obviously. When they arrive, the teacher or boss asks them to explain to him and the classroom and staff why they're late. You know, it's one of those gonna humiliate you in front of the classroom kind of situations. You know what I'm talking about. So, in the situation, what does your character say? What is their explanation given to the class? Now, again, think about your character's specs and the details behind them. What would they say? What would make sense? What would be the more appropriate way of responding? Would they be sarcastic? Would they tear up? Would they be honest? Would they spin a tall tale? And then, if you really want to get creative, go beyond the explanation. Give dialogue about what happens next. How do they go from there? Do they go sit with their friends? Are they a loner? Do they run away from the classroom? But whatever you do, make sure you explain why this fits with their character. So, in the comments, I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your response to this. And again, the best one will get a mention in my next video. All right, guys, thank you guys for watching this time. I will see you in my next video. Take care.